Hello everybody, and I'm trying to do a live stream here. Haven't done one on YouTube Live in a while, and as you see on my sign there, we're just getting things set up. I think I've got the chat on, so I'm just going to move that over here, just trying to get everything set up. And I think I can actually remove this element right here, because hopefully you can hear me. There, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see we've got some Song of Ice and Fire figures. This one is part of the Night's Watch right here. We've got one that we'll be working on tonight. This was primed the usual way with the Badger Stino Res. We'll get you a container of that right over here. So typical Badger Stino Res. There's about 12 colors in the Stino Res, and you can see I like to do a little bit of gradation here. Sometimes I use the brown, the green, and then this sort of a tan, khaki type color right here. Now we've got some Infantry 2. We've got, again, this is all part of the Night's Watch. I believe you have Sworn Brothers, and you also have the Ranger Hunters here. These were originally painted in acrylics, but this next set, and we'll show you a few more here. This next set of figures, we're going to try to do this with oils. Most of it, here we go. We got these Mig Ammo Oilbrushers right here. We're also going to use some standard paints. And let's go to right here, Mig Ammo Oilbrusher site. Well, Mig Ammo site with the Oilbrushers. There's a bunch of them. I think there are 2 sets of 25. Or 2 sets of 21, 2 sets of 22. You can also buy them, see in smaller sets right here. There's a few that you're probably going to use more than others. The nice thing about the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers is that they dry a little bit faster. They also have this nifty little thing right here that can help you get your paint out onto the palette a little bit faster. It also makes it a little bit easier to store. Can hold these vertical right here, and it's thinned down, as you can see, to the consistency of miniature paint. And we'll be using tubes of paint, but I wanted to show you the difference here. So you can see how that's almost the consistency of peanut butter right there. So this has to be thinned down. And while we're on the subject of thinning the paints, let's get this underneath here. So this is what we're going to use. This is Speedball. It's Mona Lisa, I guess, is the specific brand. This is White Spirits right here. See how it says odorless paint thinner right there? This really is odorless paint thinner. You get other stuff, the cheap stuff, and it's going to melt your eyeballs. It's also going to have some weird effects on your paint, because this is much gentler on your paint, much gentler on your nose and everything else. So I think investing in that, and it's not a lot, will really help. We're going to use it a lot in the early stages. So I'll take you through that. Now I wanted to show you the Song of Ice and Fire figures here. So again, we've got the Night's Watch here. You can see we've got the characters. I believe we got Snow, some of the other guys, and then you get down into your line troops, your Night's Watch combat units. This is a set of videos that I've already started for my own Night's Watch, and you can see the colors are a little bit different. Those are a little more traditional. That's already up on my Patreon page. I think we're on episode 4 of that series. Now I've already got one other Song of Ice and Fire series, army painting series, up on the Patreon page, and this is my Lannister unit right here, my Lannister halberds, and they were done, as you can see, with some nice sky, earth, non-metallic metal, and that's the whole unit. And I take you through the entire process. Basing, the base coats, the shaded base coat, the glazing, the midtones, even some freehand here. I'll show you that. So on our guard's captain, we even did this little bit of freehand during that set of videos. Now, I won't be doing freehand on these because, well, it's not supposed to be on these guys, and with the oils, it's usually best to wait a little while. It's not a horrible thing to wait for your oil paints to dry and then proceed. Maybe go with acrylics the rest of the way. I've done that. I actually have a few videos showing people how to do that. So we got the brushes next. Let's talk about these. Yeah, let's just get these two. This is what you'll see me use most of the time. It's a number 8 round craft brush. And I wanted to show you these because you see we have these two different looking brushes here. You got this fine point, and then you got what looks like a really long filbert brush. They're actually the same brush. One is just a little more worn down. What I wanted you to see is that once you've worn your brush down a little bit, you can make that filbert brush, but look at that. You still have a nice point to deal with, but oh, look at this, which is ideal because when you're working with your oils, you're going to do a lot of fading and blending, and now what you've got is a nice soft blending brush here. And the brushes, to say they're economical is an understatement because, here you go, here's a brand new pack of 12, and that is the price. Now these I usually get off of the website, the Hobby Lobby website, not Home Depot. You can get them at the store, but getting them online is almost a little bit easier. Now as far as oil paints go, man, just a few. You don't need the oil brushers. You could just get yourself a few key Winsor Newton colors. You get a small set of these things here. Something along the lines of this. And this was about $25 on Amazon. There's 10 colors in it. And I will never use all of these, even if I painted 20,000 miniatures. Not going to go through this stuff. So the oils, there's a few advantages. They don't dry right away. You can do a little more wet blending with them on the fly. And you just use less of them. It's something I only noticed till I started using them. So I know we're talking a lot here, but I thought if I talk here, then I can see if I've got the chat going here. So I'm looking for where my chat is. I see there's 6 people watching. Then I'm going to look to see if I can find where that chat is. I'm not seeing it. What do we got here? Ah, there it is. Let's see. So I want to show chat. So right now I don't see anybody in the chat. Okay. That's good. What I'm going to do is put these guys to the side. Now you can see in here there's a little more greens. This is almost a bluish green right here. So that's the kind of color scheme we're going to work with. We've got these warm grays in here. We've got not quite a white wolf pelt there, but as you can see, this is more of a forest ranger theme for our Night's Watch. So yeah, let's get these guys out of the way. You know, so we got the similar cloak color here. We've got sort of a burgundy color on the inside of that. We're going to do some metallic metal on the swords. That's one of the things I really love about these figures is how the weapons are just cast so perfectly. And these are all one piece, by the way. So again, you see we got some purples in here, some greens. We're going to see if we can do this with oils. That's why I've got the reference pictures up there. Let's get these brushes off to the side. Here we go. Let's get these guys out of your way. And let's put out some colors here. So we're going to start with this. This is the raw umber over here. Gonna make the palette camera just a little bit bigger. How's about that? And let's get this sucker open. And let's get some of this out here. So remember what I talked about, difference in consistency. See how that's almost like peanut butter? Next we're going to throw out a Payne's Gray. It's not black. It's actually kind of a warmish gray. A little bit of blue in there too. Because guess what? Blue and brown make black. If you want to make your own oil brushers, so I've got here is basically a nail polish container. Actually comes a little agitator in there, and guess what it's got? Check this out. Oh look, it has a brush. I can brush this stuff right out onto the palette if I want. That is a very cool thing, and all I did was just thin some paint down with those white spirits. Now we've got a few other colors we might throw out here. Might also throw out some burnt sienna. Again, it's going to be thicker. Here, let's make sure that's on the palette for you. So look at how thick those blobs are. So I'm going to get my keyboard out of the way here. You're going to see me using these basic makeup sponges. Real cheap, real cheap. When I do these initial, essentially washes of oils, we're going to pull some of that away. And let's pick a figure, any figure. Let's take this guy. We'll talk about the base just a second here. I'm going to make sure I've got, here we go. What you see here on the base is tree bark. This guy was based exactly the same way these guys were. Tree bark, rocks, gravel, oxide paste. So this is something that every one of my Army Painter series begins with, is basing the entire unit. And I've done that with the Night's Watch. What are we going to do? We're going to grab our beat up brush right here. We're going to get ourselves a little bit of liquid in this now. This is the white spirits. It's going to seem like I'm using water. Now what we're going to do is make sure we kill off this sound so there's no crazy sounds during this. How's that? Hopefully that doesn't kill my sound too. And I'll show you the difference this makes in just a second. How liquid that is. Look at that. It's almost like we've thinned it with water. Let's make this palette a little bit bigger here. Look at how thin we can make this. This is something you really couldn't do with those cheap, nasty thinners. Look at that. It goes from basically a big old blob like that to something usable right here. So what I'm going to do is find myself another little container right here and hopefully get a little bit of my thinner in there. And we're going to do the same thing to the Payne's Gray. See how bluish that gets? Look at that. Doesn't look so black anymore, especially next to that brown. Look at that. Thin it down. Thin this sucker down. Almost like it's a water-based paint. But it's not. A little word to the wise. The more of this thinner you put in there, the faster it's going to dry because you're breaking down the oil. Now these aren't going to get snow. So what I'm going to do is move back my camera again here. Gotta make sure, hopefully this is in focus for you guys. I'm just going to double check right here. Seems like he is. I'm going to put on my glove for a little bit of, not to really protect me from the paint, but protect the paint from me. We've got him set up pretty well here. And look at what we're going to do. We're going to drop in some of that nice Payne's Gray in there. But we're also going to take some of that umber. And this is going to mix together a little bit here. Look at how much darker that gets. So we're not just shading this darker. What we're trying to do is also do a little bit of tinting, which is why I'm also going to break down some of this burnt sienna here. Look at how red that is, a nice red. You can also mix it with some of the other colors. So I mix it with that purple. See, we get another even warmer brown. So here, let's throw a little bit of that right here. Just like that. And I'm going to hide this so I can see if there is anyone in the chat. Alright. I'm going to just click on this here just to see if there's someone. Alright, so all messages are visible. So I should be able to see you if you're talking to me. Sponge. See how that takes the paint away? Is that right? It's really dry here. It's been minus 20 for a couple of days. So yeah, it's dry. So look what we've done. We've taken some paint away, but we've left some behind. Now, you can use sponges of different sizes. Here, let me grab one of these. See, I got a sponge that's a different size. Look at that. Now I can get in there, way back in here, pull some of that paint away. So I'm left behind with is a little bit of shading, but this is something that we can now work with. So let's get the rest of this figure here. So I'm going to let those two mix together, and we're just going to go right over the top. Right over the top of this. See that it flows very nicely. So I can even go a little more bluish here. Throw in a little sienna. A little bit of the brown. A little bit of brown mixed with blue. And by blue, I mean Payne's Gray. So we'll get down underneath here, like so. Now I do have one entire army painting series on the Patreon page where I use oil paints. And that was fun. That was fun. There's going to be more Song of Ice and Fire unit painting exercises using oils. There's going to be Lord of the Rings. I enjoy painting oils, and as you can see, I enjoy painting armies too. If you check out the blog, that's just jameswappelblogspot.com. You can see a lot of armies there. So look at what this does. Check this out. Watch what that does. That leaves that behind. Just gently pulls some of it away. It leaves the rest there. I've also got these type of sponges. So the goal is not to take it all away. You're going to take some of it away. See, look at how that really grabs that paint off of there. Now, the difference between oils and acrylics, I have to remind myself sometimes, is that with oils you don't have to be frenetic. This will stay wet for hours. Now let's compare what we've got. So see what we just did in a few seconds. Now, of course, I took a little bit longer in the process because I'm trying to show you probably something brand new that you've never really seen before. So what do? We'll set him off to the side. We'll get to this next guy right here. Now, you could use the oil brushers for this part too, but you know, you're using a more expensive paint. These oils are just not really expensive at all. So I would suggest, why not use, and the quality is the same. There's no difference in the quality of paint. It's just one is how would you say it, miniature ready. The other one, you have to coax it a little bit, like we're doing here with our oils. And we'll continue on here. Let's get some more of this blue. And again, it's Payne's gray, but effectively, for those of you that are familiar with how I paint, this is the equivalent of blue liner and brown liner. And if you wonder what that is a couple of Reaper miniature paints. And when I first get down into a unit, well, guess what? You see that an awful lot. And I do very much what you see here. The difference is it's acrylic and it's also going to dry just a bit faster. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the sienna up here and down on his gloves. I got to tell you, even now, as I'm doing this, I'm thinking, oh boy, I have to make sure I'm not going to get some watermarks here, this, that, and the other. I'm like, no, wait a minute. What am I thinking? This is oils. Now, if you've ever been working on a large unit of guys and you're furiously painting away, thinking, oh my goodness, my color's running out, it's going to dry, or I'm doing this glaze here, I can only do it on one at a time because, well, there's going to be watermarks. It's going to dry in one place and not in the other. This is oils. I always have to remind myself, slow down, take it easy. Now, here, let's do a little more. There's sponge. So you get something like this. There's a lot of goop on your sponge. Scissors. Cut that. Now you have a new sponge to work with. And we'll continue wiping away some of this excess color here. But like I said before, we leave some behind. Now what's interesting is, let's say we need a different shape. So I'm going to take this here and I'm going to cut it to a different shape. And oh look, not only do I get 3 sponges out of 1, but I could get in there no problem. Now I've got a bigger sponge here. Can use that on the base. So again, you can see how we've already started to tint this. It's shaded a little bit. Check that out. Really fun. So again, I'm going to go over here just to make sure. So those are viewers. I'm just looking for messages. Let's see. I'm gonna do another one of these. Let's do a Ranger Hunter. Again, we're gonna dip into our Payne's gray / dark blue. And one of the reasons I thin this down, and this could be something you hear over and over again, but it's essential with oils. Thin paint sticks on thick paint, vice versa. So you can see how we're going thin right here. That means my subsequent layers can be thicker and it's going to stick. Because if you just try and pile thin paint or thick paint on top of thick, or vice versa, thin on top of thin, most likely what you're going to do is just wipe away what you put there. That is really likely to happen. And you'll just get frustrated and you'll say, I hate working with oils. I don't know what's going on. That is an easy way to avoid a lot of the frustrations with oils. you'll say, okay, well, I started thin and I started working thicker. Well, what am I supposed to do? You say the thick paint won't stick on the thick paint. And this, you'll see me doing this. You actually go back the other way. You actually turn around, and then you start going thin again. This is something that I learned while using oils on miniatures. And sure enough, I was actually able to do what's tantamount to a glaze or a wash in oils over wet oils. If you had told me before I started this, oh, here we go. I've been waiting for ages for you to paint an Ultra Smurf. Well, let's see. I'll be part way there because I have some I have those Sigmarite figures, well, sort of like Sigmar Space Marines. We're going to start with those. I also actually have some orcs. Are they Flash Gits and Burna Boys? And Ender says, I just can't get the values right. I think it would be definitely interesting doing Space Marines with oils because I'm sure the first thing you think of is, well, the shoulder pads would be easy to blend and be easy to blend all the leg armor and everything else. I think the other fun thing that oils will be able to do for a Space Marine, get you a little more variety so that, say, an Ultramarine, imagine you're able to get greens and purples and other weird colors in the shadows so much easier than if you were trying to mix those in with acrylics and do layer upon layer upon layer. Now with oils, people say, so what's the base coat? This is the nearest equivalent to a base coat. Oils just don't work that way. So here we go. Again, another one. Here, I'm just going to make sure I've got these set aside. Boom. Like so. Let's do this guy. Why not? What I'm going to do is grab the horse next because, well, that's going to take a little while. I don't necessarily want you guys to have to see me do this 1,000 times. Now, when I do the army painting videos for the Patreon page, you're watching me do a unit of 10, 12, whatever, from start to finish. I mean, that's all 12. We're talking about basing. We're talking about the initial coats. You see the whole thing. There's nothing that's hidden there. You see the entire process. Which is why a typical Army Painter series is 5 episodes long. Typically 10 to 12 hours total. So you are seeing the entire process. I didn't want it to be one of these things where you pop the thing in the oven, you just mix, pop it in the oven, and poof, out comes a 10-layer wedding cake. No, I figured you guys would want a little more depth than that. Alright, let's keep going here. So again, we'll do this guy with our oil coat. Then we'll move on to a horse, of course. Here we are. You notice I just tend to grab both of the Payne's Gray and our dark umber there. This is just straight up Payne's Gray here. Let that flow. I do some more over here. Boom. On the cloak. Now let's just hit this too. Get this out of the way. Now, I know other people, they ask, well, what about, why don't you do white primer or black primer and just leave it at that? Well, context matters. It's really important. Let's say you paint the face, you're doing a Space Marine. You paint his face, you primed in black. Well, every color looks light next to black. So you make your face colors darker and darker and darker. I'm going to throw a little Payne's gray here on our sword. Again, look at how nicely that's cast. Let's say you do that. Well, then you start sorry, to paint the rest of your Space Marine, all the colors around him, like his armor, which is much darker. And now your face looks like he's been irradiated in a nuclear blast. Again, because what was around him, it was black. So you made those colors darker and darker because they just seemed too light. Essentially, this is what I'm doing here, is getting rid of the primer. It's one of the first things that I do, is just get rid of the primer, cover that up. The advantage here of these oil glazes is I'm also starting to see where my darkest darks might be. And again, I can cut these suckers like so. Now we got ourselves a little bit of the burnt sienna there. You can see the brown, you can see the blue over here. So I'm going to set that one aside. I'm going to grab the horse. So again, I'm going to go back to my here. So you can see, I'll spin him around. Pretty similar on those two bases. Tree bark is a stick. A lot of this stuff I just pick up off the ground. A lot of it just right off the ground. So here we are, back to our umber. Let's thin it down just a touch. I hit this base. Look at how much darker that gets. And if it doesn't flow, well, just like you would add a little water, right? I just added a little bit more of my white spirits. Every so often I call it mineral spirits. Don't use that. Yeah, you don't want to use mineral spirits. That's not what you want. So I'll just paint up our tree branch there. Just grab some more of this. I know people ask, is the tree bark, does it have longevity? Is it going to last? Well, I've been basing with bark for years. I still have those miniatures, and they are just as good today as they were years ago. And by years, I think at least 5 years. Some of those things have had that bark. And the bark is not worse than the bite. And we're just going to get that covered up there. Our horse. And I'm just going to get here on the bottom. Again, I can use a little bit of my spirits if I feel that it's not flowing. Going to work our way up. Work our way up. Now you can maybe understand why I advocate using a 35-cent craft brush for a lot of this process. This is somewhat violent. Look at how I'm just attacking this miniature here. And yes, I'm also attacking the camera. It's tight quarters here, folks. Tight quarters. Oh, look at that. Just get that nice initial glaze in there. Now let's say we're thinking about our horse being more a reddish tan. Well, I can start to throw that in right now. Right now. Right in this early stage. Just start to throw that in there. And again, I know this is messy. But don't think, oh, that's what, that's how you do paint with oils. No. It's just as messy with the acrylics, folks. If anybody that's watched any of my videos, and again, there's tons of them on the YouTube channel. I believe I've got 103 or 4. Well, technically it'll be video number 104, I think. And every single one of those shows a lot of paint flying all over the place and brushes being used in a brisk manner. Look at that. So we're just starting to get ourselves a lot of nice pre-shading on our horse, along with a little bit of tinting. Now, I know some people, they talk about oils, they smell, and to me, oils have a little bit of a smell to them, but to be honest, you open a jar of olives, and to me, that has a stronger smell. And I don't mind smell oil paint. It's something I've loved since I was a kid. I think my first oil painting, I was 12, 13 years old. I guess you could say I've been looking for an excuse to go back to it for years, and, well, now I've just found it. So I think this would be figure number 5 that we've worked up this way. And again, I don't want you to just watch me doing this for hours, so we're just gonna go with what we got. We're almost ready to get in with our regular paint. So here's our sponge again. Boom. Taking some of that away. Taking some away. Over here, spin him around. Boom. Let's cut our sponge here. So look at what that does. Yeah, that just leaves us with a nice, right in there. Going along our cloak here. See, we've got his pouches and packs. And if you can't reach an area, that's what this one's for. I can get down in there. It's a little more precise, but it's also going to take away more than the other sponge types. Here we are. I'll grab a little more off of our base with our sponge. Now, if you're wondering what I use to clean my brushes and that sort of thing, actually rubbing alcohol works fantastic. I use it to clean my brushes all the time, even with acrylics, and it works well with oils too. So we've got ourselves now a nice bit of shading as compared to this with no shading on it. So we've pretty well got our primer out of the way. I'm going to maybe reduce the size of my pictures here just a touch. And now let's start to take advantage of some of these things. So I'm going to move some guys out of the way here, off to the side. Now we'll throw out some of our oil brushers, and this is one that I really enjoy. This is a red primer color right here. And you can see it just, let's find ourselves a spot. Yeah. You do not have to put out a lot of this. Again, a little bit of oil paint is going to go a really long way. I'm also going to throw out some green here. And you can see it's a bit of a darker green. Just a little bit of that here. That's good. And I'm going to get myself a little bit of a, this is more of a raw sienna right here. So burnt sienna This is what you saw over here in the corner. This is more of a raw sienna. One thing you won't see me put out here is white. That's just not going to happen. Now I'm just going to put this little sky blue out here. So you can then just kind of plopping this in, finding a good spot where you can still see it. Now I'm going to throw a few, well, speaking of yellow ochre, that's basically this. It's a little bit warmer maybe than yellow ochre, but here, let's get that right over here on the palette. Again, a little goes a long way. Start out with less. Dusty earth. I'm essentially using this as an off-white. We are going to put this right here. And again, the folks that have seen my regular videos, even with acrylics, this is not going to be that unusual. Now, we'll put this yellow bone out there because I just want you to see what's going to happen with this. So, there it is, right here on the palette. And that's that. Going to get rid of the scissors. I got a whole bunch of sponges sitting around here we don't want. Alright. Now, we're going to restore our filbert brush here. Back to the way that is. And we're going to grab one of our Night's Watch. Also want you to see what happens. I'm going to grab a little bit of my Payne's Gray here. Going to make the palette big again. Move it over. What we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of that and look at what we've got now. Watch what happens. Remember, it's just Payne's Gray. And look at how that lightens that up. Can make it even bigger. See that right there? Right in there. Now, we can go in here with our blue. So look at how we have a whole different range of blues here. And that color is going to sit there for hours. Could possibly even still be wet tomorrow. You can do the same thing with green. But let's do a little exercise here with our umber. So see how I can, oh, look at that nifty, nice light. Look at all these colors already. See how all these colors that I've got here. Just, it's so fun to mix these things up, make new colors out of them. What does that mean? It means that whole thing of, oh, I need a paint set with 400 paints in it. Well, maybe not. So what am I going to do? We're going to work a little more thick here, like we talked about. So here's, look at what we're going to do here. Now the one thing that oil paint is going to do, it's going to be a little shiny. You know what paint is shiny? Well, this is going to stay shiny a little longer. Remember that green? What am I going to do? I'm going to take that blue, going to mix it with that green. And now, got myself a nice bluish green cloak. And you know what I can do? I'm even going to drag that up here onto his fur. Let's have some fun with this. Let's grab a little bit of green and greenish gray. Looks like I've got this set up for you pretty well. What are we going to do? Do a big old brush stroke like so. And another brush stroke like so. Kind of wipe away the excess. And we're going to blend that. I'm going to take here. Let's make this a little bit brighter. Let's make this a little more on the bluish side. Let's grab even more. So look what we did here. So see what we got here? That's just a plain old color there. And I move one of these lights. So we've got this whole nice, watch this. See how that just blends itself? It's doing all the work for me. And why? Because I've got that softer brush, right? Brush is softer. I'm just going to do the same thing right here. Look at that big old wide brush right over the top. Now, let's say we want to go, we'll go a little bit thinner here. Remember, thin paint sticks on a thicker paint. Let's make this a little lighter because we have not gone light at all. Go back over here again. See how much lighter I can go? Now here's an interesting thing. Alright, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to plop that right there. I'm going to take me some green. I'm going to plop that right there. I'll take me some green. I'm going to plop it over here and over here and over here. And I'm going to take some straight up green off the palette, plop that over here, and mix up a bunch of stuff and go crazy. And what am I going to do? I'm going to find myself another one of these. What am I going to do? I'm going to blend this. Making sure I clean the brush in between. So I just did there is I just blended that. See, I've got this hard edge here. So you can see that. Watch that disappear. See that? So I just did some nifty smooth blends. Look at this. This cloak is going to have all kinds of really nice, subtle shades of greens, of grays, and blues. And how long did that take? Yeah, let's kill a little bit of that extra light there coming from the side. I'm just gonna, yeah, there we go. Now, let's see what we want to do with the fur. Oh, look at that. And now, see that dark glaze that we did? Look what's going to happen. See how it interacts with the color that I'm putting down? That is really fun. You can see how it's lighter here. And look at how it got darker as it went around. Yeah. That's what I wanted to have happen. That's why I didn't wipe away completely that wash. So I left some of it behind because I wanted to work with it. Now again, I can get back in here with some lighter colors. But this is the fun thing. See how that gets dirty there on that tip? And it's essentially mixing with the colors that are already there. So again, instead of endless layering to make things lighter, we can just take advantage of what we already put there. So we've got some colors that are more almost pink over here because it's mixing with that brown. Over here they're almost a little more yellow. So I just took a little bit of that yellow ochre and I'm going to throw that right in the cloak there. So I just, again, tinted that a little bit different. See, I'm going to throw some here. Right here. On the hilt of his sword. Alright. Let's get down in here. And go with that green again. And you say, man, you're going to go over that reddish color with the green? You darn right I am. And that's going to be very cool. Because you can see it's starting to mix with the red that's underneath. We can lighten this up a touch. I can even put a little bit on his sword. Let's make his hair a bit darker, shall we? Like that. Gloves. We're going to go back to our burnt sienna. Right over his gloves. Let some of that mix into here. Even some of that on his beard. This is probably one of the more difficult things for people to adapt to. This notion that it's a little bit free-form. You just have colors mixing, not uncontrolled. Heck, they're not even mixing on their own. You're controlling all of that. But I think people get freaked out. They think that it's totally not under control, but it actually is. And remember, we do have brushes that have more of a nicer tip on them. We need to make a skin tone. Skin tone, all it is some kind of yellow, some kind of reddish color, and something light. So let's mix ourselves up a skin tone here. Now let's make it a little more grayish. Let's see what we got. So we need to make it a little more pinkish. Here, let's see if we can play match the skin tone game. There we are. That's not too shabby. Oh, hey there, Bethany. How's it going? I know that for people who live where I live, it's insane o'clock in the morning. Well, for me, it's almost not insane o'clock in the morning yet. It will be in an hour and a half. It's about 3:11 here in the Windy City, where it's, well, less cold, thank goodness. That was not a fun stretch. So what are we going to do here? I'm going to take my skin tone. I'm going to mix it with that burnt sienna. And guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to get me some middle tone on my gloves here, on that pack, on his boots, maybe even a little over here. So again, I know it is so weird to think of colors just mixing on their own. You see how that covers? That will cover because what's underneath is a thinner paint. What we're putting over the top is a thicker paint. So we're going on to his boots here. Again, just finding some mid-tones there. Look at all of these nifty colors that I've got to work with. There's another interesting thing about oils that I noticed. Some of my old Winsor Newton Series 7s that were just about to be put in the garbage they got a new life. Because believe it or not, this oil paint, it's almost like conditioner on dry split hair. It literally acted as conditioner, which was kind of a cool surprise. So there we go. Now, the sword blade, I want to get a little bit of sky color in there somewhere. Just a touch there. While I've got this, just going to throw a little bit over here. Throw a little bit over here. And some over there. Some here. Some here. Let that blend in. We've got these studs right here. We'll hit those. And I might even throw a little bit of this blue into some of our fur color here. Again, letting it mix. Let's do some stuff on our base here. You can see I've flattened out the brush. This is not a dry brush. There's a ton of paint in here. It looks like it, but it definitely is not. Now I have to think, what am I going to put on that? I'm going to put a lot of forest cover on it. So always think about, for me, painting is always like a game of chess, trying to think moves ahead. With oils, it's weird. You have to think ahead, but you also have to realize that a lot of the pieces will just change in the middle of the game, or the board gets turned around. I know it's hard for people to wrap their minds around that, but here, let's get a few more lights on here. See, we're starting to get into more contrast now. Got your blood channel there. Let's thin this down a touch. See how that still covers over? So you can see there's always one more level I can go. Look at the difference between that side and this side. Like so. Now our skin tone. Let's start to drop in some, not just lighter, but also some cooler colors in there. So you can, it's not all frenzy. You can see we're starting to be a little more deliberate, I guess is the word we'll say. And like I said, the one thing that's different about oils is you will get that touch of shininess. It's just, that's the nature of the beast. Like I said, a little can go a long way. See how just that little bit starts to bring out some of that fur. And see if I can get this out on the palette for you. So you can, yeah, now you can see what I'm actually We're having a little bit of that. So eventually you can start to pick out some of our rocks here. Now just imagine, obviously you'd have to let this dry, but if you want to get through an army with a lot of nifty color variation but not have to spend hours and hours and hours blending things with acrylics, maybe this might be for you, as I take a little bit of that same golden brown color and start to work on his hair. We're even gonna throw a little more green in that skin tone. Right in there, where his eyes are. And again, we're letting the skin color mix. See that? See if I can make this a little bit bigger for you here. I'm going to go to our controls. And let's make sure it's focused for you. See how that mixed together right here? Guess what? I'm going to take that same green, make sure I use it in other areas. So here's some of our bluish gray. That's going to go in there. Yeah, look at these nice, smooth blends that took mere seconds to create. That's all it took. Matter of seconds. This is fun too. What are we going to do? We're going to get a little bit of bluish gray into our leathers. What I just did there, see underneath that, the bottom side of his glove. I know because I was just working with acrylics most of the last month and a half, and I'm just looking at that going, oh man, that's really a pain trying to get that extra little blending of color like that with acrylics, with oils. If you're aware of how to control it and you just think about it a little bit, you can get some pretty fun results. So I am going to go back here. Now we're going to do a little bit on the top of the hair. Now, if I wanted that to show up a little more, I could thin it down. But what I'm actually trying to do is get that to blend. I don't want that to be a distinctive color unto itself. I actually do want that to blend a little bit. There we go. So let's go back to our bluish gray here. I'm going to throw a little bit more of my lighter oil brusher color out here. There we go. So again, that's an off-white. It is not a white. So now we've got ourselves a bit of a bluish gray again. And we're trying to now get his collar there. Heck, I can even throw some of that onto his beard. Again, if I feel like I need to lighten up that cloak, so what I can do, remember I've got my blending brush here. So I just threw that down there. Oh yeah, I think you can see this. Throw that down there. And watch me just feather that out. Look at that. See how that's feathered out? It's like an airbrush. Now people, they talk about airbrushes all the time. Why don't you use an airbrush? Well, I don't. I use the airbrush to prime all the time. All of these were primed with an airbrush. But I got these brushes, and I got these paints. I got these oil paints. And is this not fun? Doing all of these nice blends like so. I don't know. To me, that is fun. I enjoy the heck out of it. So here we just put some of that down. Got my blending brush again. Watch that. See how that just works its own little magic right there. Alright, we need a little separation here. And if you don't want to use these larger brushes, you do not have to. I won't be there looking over your shoulder. Well, maybe I will be. I don't know. But if you feel like you need to use something thinner, well, by all means, go ahead. But you can see having the big old brush like this just presents more options for me. Now, what do I mean by bringing brushes back? So this, see that little one hair right there? Yeah, this is unusable for acrylics. However, as I discovered with oils, it's usable. Alright. And I'm going to go right down in here. Just dropped in that eye. It's all wet oil paint. Again, with a brush. And I just, for the heck of it, tried using it for acrylics the other day. And I got that same result that I expected. Didn't work. Totally didn't work. Now you're seeing that I'm thinning this down a little bit to make it flow. I don't want to thin it down too much, otherwise it's just going to be a little watery puddle in there. But how's that? So we got ourselves a pair of eyes in there. See, I can start to throw some highlights there on the arm. So you can use small brushes with oils, no problem. We've got some of this yellow on here, so maybe we'll try and find some lighter colors for his hair. Looks like I've got it where you can see it. And look at that. See, I can start to follow the line of the hair. Like so. Now, I used to always think, back in the days when I did oil painting, that oil paintings are sort of a dark to light exercise. Thought the same thing about pastels, and then I realized, nah, not quite. Not quite. Here, let's grab some of our darker colors here. That's the Payne's gray. And guess what I can do? I can come back in there and bring in some more details again. And here. So let's see what we can do with this sword. Oh, look at that. So you can exercise Lots of control, and this is all wet oil paint over wet oil paint. None of this is dry. People ask me all the time, how do you make oil paints dry faster? I always have an excellent method. It's foolproof. It works every time I use acrylics. Because there's a reason why we're using oils. Because we want to be able to relax, take your time, not have to rush between layers. Won't have to do that with the oils. Say that, let's even get a little bit of a dark over his eyes. So yes, it is possible to paint with a lot of control using the oils. Oh, hey Gary, how's it going? Yeah, this is... I've been wanting to do this for a while, but they change how these things work so much. It seems like every other week I go to research how to do this, and it's completely different. I must have spent an hour and a half today trying to watch, guess what, tutorial videos on how the heck to set this up. Alright, let's go back to that umber color here. Look at this. Look what we're going to do. We're just going to shade around those. That's acting a little bit more like miniature paint, right? Look how we got that dark. We're gonna do something here. So see how much of this, look at that. It's darn near a glaze, right? Let's see if you can see that. So I just did a glaze down in there. I just glazed wet oil paint over wet oil paint. What I didn't do, you didn't see me going back in over and over again and touching it. Why? Oil paint, the nifty thing about it is it has a capillary action. This is a good spot. This is a good spot here. Let's make sure I've got this, I hate saying watery, but fluid enough. Let's use that word here. Let's get a little more. And watch what's going to happen here. See what that, look at what that just did. Look at what that just did right in there. That's all wet oil paint. It's all wet oil paint. We're going to do it again. I'm going to do it here. But you see I didn't paint. It's literally touch and go. Bang. Touch it. Let the oil do the rest. See now, and it's not a black line because it's mixed. It's done a little bit of its own thing there in the shadows. It's also got a little more color to it. I'm going to do some of that over here. Oh, I have been itching forever to do one of these oil paintings. See what I just did? I'm even forgetting. I'm forgetting I'm using oils already. I'm just having so much fun. See what I'm doing? I'm glazing. I am glazing away with oils. Yep. Because you can do that. We need some dark in here. Look at this. See what I just did there? Just dropped in some dark. We're going to do it over here. Just going to drop some right there. Now, how long have we been painting on this guy right here? And there's a lot of folks that they would be super happy just with this. Their whole army looked this way. We've got all these nifty blends, right? We got different colors. We have lights, we have darks, we have all of that. And it doesn't have to take a bazillion years. So you can get finer with the oils. Now what I'm going to do, let's see. Here we go. Do I have some here? Ah, here it is. I'm just going to throw out a little touch of red here. And again, by touch, I mean like that. Don't even need that much. Throw a little bit of this. Get a little bit of a rosy color here. See how thin that freaking little brush is right there? I want to get a little bit of rosiness on the face. Maybe even a little here on his forehead. But then we're going to do the opposite here. We're going to get almost some yellow and some green. What am I going to do? I'm going to knock some of this down. Just like that. And grab some of my darker umber here. And remember, I'm talking about that capillary action. Here, let's let that happen here. Can you see it? I think so. Bang, there it goes. And for those of you that use oils on vehicles, you'll recognize that as a panel line wash, I believe. That's what it's usually called. Here, I'm going to go back to some of this bluish gray again. And we're gonna, there. I'm gonna take some of that and get it on his forehead here. A little bit under the eyes. So you can see where it's starting to shade around his eyes. We always have, all right here on our palette, we have our lighter colors. Again, for those of you that are just coming in for the first time, we're painting Song of Ice and Fire Night's Watch. And we're using oil paints. So here's a quick little peek at right now. These are the oil brusher paints from Mig Ammo. And we started out with a really rough glaze. And now we're starting to add in a little more precision. So we get some of our lights in here. All of this paint, it's all wet over wet. And I will reinforce the idea. There's not a lot of rules that I don't like to throw down rules all the time, but it's physics. There's nothing I can do about that. It's the law of physics. That thinner paint sticks over thick paint and vice versa. See that little line that I just threw right there? That just doesn't happen if it's the same level of thickness. So remember our nifty blends. We could still blend this if we wanted. All of this stuff is still completely workable. You can see we've got starting to get some nice little non-metallic metal going on our sword here. Look at this. I'm just going to throw a little bit of a highlight on that blood channel there. What I am going to do is I'm going to find myself a bright yellow here. Somewhere I've got an actual bright yellow. Let's see if I can find it. Boom, this is what I'm looking for. So this is just yellow. Throw a little touch of that out there. Again, don't have to go crazy. You only need a little bit of it. Just to get a little brightness there. little differential now. I've got that red. Now I can make myself a bit of an orange. To go in here. And boy, oh boy, I threw so much of this down. I did not have to put that much down. I violated my own rule. See that? I said don't put too much down. And I actually threw down way more than I'll probably need. So let's do another one of those panel line wash things here. So we're getting that really thin down color. And here on this pouch, see that all I did was drop that in there. Not painting with it, I'm just dropping that in. Now here, I'm going to take my red. Let's see if we can't make a warm burgundy out of this. So I'm taking the red, mixing it with a little bit of that burnt sienna. Let's get some on the inside of his cloak here. Just a little touch of it. A little touch here. Now, if you are not comfortable painting the eyes with wet oil paint and doing all this kind of stuff that I'm doing, well, when I first started using this, I did not think that I was going to be able to get this level of watch. Just didn't think I was going to be able to do stuff like that. I thought, well, I'll just let it dry and then go over it with acrylics. And it worked fine. You may want to just throw some dull coat over it, after you've done doing letting it dry and everything before you hit it with acrylics. And acrylics will cover over it. I know they did for me. So again, I apologize for the shininess, but that's the one thing you gotta deal with oils. And yes, I can just drop that eye in there. Wet oils over wet oils. Because yes, you can do that. So we've done a lot on him in just a short period of time. Alright, got his sword now. Here, let's get a few lights in a few places here on his cheekbones. We played around with him. His cloak. Let's mess around with one of these. We all want to see a horsey getting painted. Alright, so let's paint a horsey. So we're going to go back to our larger brush. Here, I'm going to set this aside so I know I've been using that. And I'm going to go right back to our sienna over here. Look at this. We can mix this all up. Let's paint ourselves some horse. Boom. Like so. Using some of that preliminary wash. See how I'm just scumbling that color in there? It's another little bit of an art term. Just scumble that right in. So I'm basically trying to match that horse that I did. Alright. Look at how all it takes is that little bit. See, I'm just pushing it around like this. Look at how that flows. And what are we going to do? We're going to take some darker colors now. And now we're going to do this. We're going to let those mix together. Here's some of that umber. It's a darker color here on the reins and on his face. Like so. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to take a touch of red here. Do the underside of this cloak. I think you can see that. Yeah. I think we just about got the cloak. Gonna put some on his boots here. On his boots over here. Hit the bow a little bit. And I know it just looks so amazingly haphazard. Now let's throw out some darker oil brusher colors here. So we've got, let's throw out a little bit of this. It's called Starship Filth. What a lovely sounding color. Oh, and let's throw a little bit of that on our horse here. Because remember, we don't want boring colors on this. We're trying to get interesting colors. Throw a little bit of that mud color in there too. It's the whole point of using oils, is to be able to do this kind of wet blending, get all these really neat color mixtures without having to kill yourself or just take a million years. The whole idea of this is to get really nifty results much faster. There we go. Let's grab a little bit of my dark blue there. And we're just going to darken up that tail. Use it on his head. Going to use some of it on his tunic. Like so. And the horse's mane. Right over the top of that. Over his nose. Again, hitting the boots. And now, to do our little thing with the blue that we did before and some of the green. Got his cloak here. Now, get some colors into this. Even more of that green. Making sure some blue gets into that. You can see how often I clean the brush, which is not a lot. So we've pretty much got our color just splattered all over him. Alright? And the horse. Let's start to do some things. Let's do some stuff with his cloak while we let the horse settle. Sometimes if you let the paint settle for a few minutes, you'll be interesting what happens. Now, I'm going to actually put a little more Payne's Gray out here, just so I have it to work with. And I'm going to find some of my green again. Put that out there. And let's grab some of that blue, green. And now, just like we did On that other cloak, we're going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to grab this guy. So that's what we did here. That's what we're going to try and do here. Oh look, we have that same color from the other cloak still sitting there. We've already started to shift this more towards the color of that first one. But in my shadow areas now is going to be kind of a reddish brown tone that just wouldn't have been there otherwise. So let's get some of that sky blue in there. And now the cloak starts to come a little bit more gray. Same thing over here. Again, let that brush kind of splay out while I have this gray. Guess what? It's going to go over here where there's some rocks. Not on my tree branch. Let's lighten this up a touch. I'll do this again. Let it blend. Like so. And again, for folks that are new, I already have several oil painting videos that are part of the Patreon page. I got some dark sword videos, some of my dark sword miniatures. That's where I'll do a little exercise, or I'll take the same figure and then I'll say paint it in acrylics, and then turn around, take the same figure, make another one, and paint that in oils to the same color scheme. And it's a nifty exercise because it shows you the difference in how you approach the two to get the same color result. So that's pretty fun. So here's some lighter gray now. And look at the difference of that. Look at how much lighter that is. And you think, wait a second, what's he doing? He had all those soft blends and now they've all just been blown away. Well, not really. Not really at all. Because what we will now do is find our blending brush here. Position this like so. Draw that down. Push that around. Soften the... See, it softens that, blends it together. Oops. Be helpful if it was on the screen. Sorry. It's late here. It's been a very long day. I think I spent a good several hours prepping these things so that they would be ready to show you guys tonight. And it seems like this is working okay. I'm hoping that it's also recording so that maybe I can try and edit this a little bit. Here we are. And like the little crawl says, the Army Painter pledge level is just $15 a month. And you're going to get, well, even just with the Army Painter series alone, you're going to get 10 to 12 hours of videos. And you're also going to get the Dark Sword videos. And you basically get all the videos that I make that month. And I typically make, oh geez, almost 10 to 12 videos a month, I think, these days. So that's every single month. You guys, again, would be able to see all kinds of basing techniques. Obviously, oil painting techniques like this. Look at this, I got that fine brush. I just laid it on its side. It's full of paint. And yet, look what I can do here. Remember those sponges that we had before? See what I can do? I can actually blend with those sponges. It's still got some paint in it. See what I just did? I mixed the paint around there. Let's go back to our horse here. And now we'll start to, just like we did with the robe, start working on our horse. And he's going to start to come to life as well. Look at that. Again, it's a big old flat brush, but see how it's picked up some dirt there? It will pick up dirt along the way. That's the neat thing. That's why it lets you blend. That's also why you want to keep doing that. See, I've got to go back. I got to get some fresh paint here. I'm going to go over here. What I'm going to do is, sorry to go back to my control, I'm going to cut down some of the color intensity here. So it's not blinding you guys. I think I had it set up to about 53, about 55 or 56. It just helps in those early stages so you can see what I'm doing. It's not quite so invisible. See how that just letting that do its thing. Letting that blend together. I'm letting the paint and the miniature do all the work. Because why not? And I do have to, at a certain point, I have to start thinking about using a little bit of the white spirits to thin down those paints. I'm just gonna start to bring in midtones at this point. Not highlights, these are midtones. What I love about the Song of Ice and Fire figures is all the musculature on the horses is sculpted so finely. There's, not sure if it shows up on camera, but you can actually see the veins over the muscles. And that really impressed the heck out of me when I saw that. Now, just to get some difference here, I'm going to hit some of these other surfaces, like his bow. It's all about context again. It's all about the context. Because if I hit this lighter color here, his reins, all of a sudden that color does not look so light anymore. Again, it's all about establishing what's really light and what's really dark. I'm going to go back into our brown again. You can see we start to pick out some of the muscles there. And this is what is so much fun about oils. Just drop that right in. Do the same thing here. So it looks very rough until we get ourselves our blending brush here. And now I'm just going to gently move that around. See, all I did was go after the sides of that, each of those little brush strokes, and now we've just blended that all together. Remember, we've got our small brush here too. Let's thin this down. You can figure out where you want his eyes to be here. Just mark those. Start to work on his reins here a bit, his bridle. Don't want to lose sight of some of these nifty greens here. And that's going to get into his sleeves a little bit, but also into our horse. Just like we tried working greens into the flesh tone of the guy, so I just put some of that down here into the little bit of shadows of a horse. Work this over his I guess now jerkin is the shirt, because at the Ren Fair I had to wear one of those. It was always called a jerkin. So back to the green here a little bit on him while we got it, and then onto the horse again. I'm going to go back to my bigger brushes now. Get some brown on his boots that has a little more yellow in it. Constantly moving, constantly shifting around. Speaking of yellow. And the nifty thing is it's just going to blend itself and create an entirely different color. Like even here, see how it's gonna blend itself. Now, I also have a slightly more orangey color here. Yeah, that's a word. I'm gonna say orangey is a word. Throw some of that in here. Throw some over these leg muscles here, some on the head. And as always, sometimes you just have to get a little bit of the mineral spirits, or white spirits, sorry, in there to make it flow. Like that. Over here. On the haunches, we can do the same thing. You can see how as the brush gets dirty, it starts to blend. Sometimes I clean it up a little bit. But underneath here is all of that greenish brown. You can just let all of that blend itself. And every so often, I'm just going to remind folks that this is oil paints right here. So if you're wondering why is it so shiny, that will tell you why. Because oil paints, as you're working with them, they are going to be shiny. That is just how it is. And you can see here we're just going to drop in some light colors here. They almost look like stripes until we go to our brush to try and blend some of that. So away we go. Clean off some of that off the brush. And watch how that all of a sudden goes from a bunch of haphazard brush strokes to something again that looks like it's been virtually airbrushed. And in case you're wondering, the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers are designed to dry flat, but even the regular oil paints, once they're dry, they dry flat. You can check out some of my other videos on the Black Heart bust. I think I've done 2 or 3 of those in oils, maybe 3 of those in oils. Yeah, I've done several of those in oils already. Check those out. I've got creature caster miniatures that are being done in oils. But for right now, what we're working on is our Song of Ice and Fire. Night's Watch. These are the Ranger trackers, the horsemen. So again, throw that on there. Gonna grab this to do a little blending here. And always gotta do a little bit of cleaning on the brush. A little bit of cleaning here. And here. See what we've done? We've blended that all nice there. Let's get back into some of our lighter tones here. Now we haven't done any super highlights yet. It's still basically, we're just adding mid-tones. If you can believe it, it's just mid-tones so far. Let's just get some of this on his face. And he is not wearing gloves, I'm going to say, so we're going to throw some of that on his hands. Gonna get a little lighter here. Just find ourselves a few places. See, sometimes you don't even need the blending brush if you just remove a little bit of the paint that's in there. See how that blends in there real nice? Look at that. There we go. And this is what I love about these craft brushes, because you can turn them into these filberts to give you a nice gentle brush stroke there. Nice gentle brush stroke. Let you blend some things. Just gonna throw a little bit of this onto the quiver. A little more of that yellowish color onto the bow. We've got some fletching there. Gonna get the saddle here, so there's a little bit of separation between the horse and that saddle. What I'm going to do is actually back this out just a bit so we can see a little more of the horse. That's better. I realized it was getting a little bit tough probably to see what was going on here. And even here, I can still use a big old brush here. Just gonna let that do some blending. Actually gonna let the shirt get a little bit lighter there. Just because. Just trying to find some lighter colors in the leather here. And I'm going to get some of this, that blue back out there. And here's some of that light grayish tan. And now I'm gonna throw a little shading in on his tunic here. Again, thin it down when you feel that you need to. And then see how it just lets you control that. Real nice. Again, up here. Arrow. Get a little bit of blue there so that it starts to gray that down a bit. And as I've said, with even when I'm using the acrylic stuff and I'm doing the more traditional acrylic paint style, it's just going to look more messy until it's that last portion of it, when all of a sudden it just seems to transform. So here we're going back into that Payne's gray again. And we're just going to get some grays back in here. Just going to use it to get some grays in here. Darken it down even more. Again, trying to get some grays into our tail there. Remember that notion of doing that glaze. So it looks like you can sort of see this here. What I'm going to do is if it has enough of the white spirits in there, it'll just do its little capillary action thing and just sink down into some crevices. Do that over here. Let that sink down again into those crevices. Time for some green here. Because yes, we're going to actually get some green on our horse. A few key places here. Like on his legs. And gonna get some of the bluish gray even here near his hooves. So what I will do is, well, depending on how the schedule is tomorrow, either I pick this up again in another YouTube live, but I'll be doing more of this unit. There's a lot more of these to go. I'm going to definitely film some special episodes for the patrons that also piggyback off of this, because there's lots of these yet to go. There's a lot of these figures yet to do. There's plenty yet to do. And like I've got the address up there. It's just James Wappel at Patreon. And the $10 Dark Sword pledge will get you several hours of content. And the $15 Army Painter pledge, that basically gets you everything. Pretty much whatever's done during the course of a given month, that ends up in front of your eyeballs. I do also have high-res versions of all of my videos that you can get on a USB drive. So you can put it on any machine as many times as you want. And you always have a backup of it. So that is another option. But the cheapest way is definitely via the Patreon page. No doubt about that. Because again, for $15 a month, you get a whole heaping helping of videos every single month. I got my blue here. Got to do some stirrups. See how that covers there. Got my, yep, got some yellow over here that's still good. Got to do the touch on the saddle here. And again, I do apologize for the shininess of the oil paints. And we've been working with a few different things. We've been working with the Mig Ammo Oilbrushers, but also regular oil paint. The oil paint is not terribly expensive. Man, like I mentioned earlier, that stuff goes a really long way. You can get a whole bunch out of it. I could pretty much go work on all 12, 13 of these guys pretty easily, and only sporadically have to put out some more paint. let's get a little more interesting things going on with the eyes here. To the other one. There we go. Get some dark in the mane here. And it's okay to go back and forth with this. There's not anything that says you can only go lighter and lighter and lighter. What are we doing? We're building back a little bit of dark here. Right across this. The horse is going to need a little bit of not just lighter colors here, but also colors that are a bit more bluish gray. Yeah, you could even here we are. The marking there, you could put that. Now we can get some lights. The nostrils. Again, we got the bridle here. I've got my yellowish paint here. Gonna hit the reins. And it just increases the definition a little bit more, a little bit more. And remember, first one that we did, this guy right here, we can still blend him, move him around, and see how he's a little less shiny now? Even after not a lot of time, he's already, again, a little less shiny. So you just let your paint sort of settle in on the figure there. It's going to start to dry. Sometimes you can make a little better assessment of it. That's why I like using this on multiple figures instead of just one at a time. As you can see how it's really efficient because you can move around from figure to figure, come back again. And like I said, when you want to do that washing effect, where you use the capillary action, all you need to do is make sure you have enough of the white spirits in there. So we're going to mix some white spirits here, white spirits a little more. And then we're just going to let that fall down, capillary action wise, down into those shadows. We're going to do the same thing here on the nose. Same thing around the bridle here. Same thing here on this side. Again, we're just letting that capillary action do its thing. Water has a tendency to carry a tension. Have you ever noticed that water will actually sit on the end of a cup or a bowl or a table or whatever, and it just sort of hangs there, almost like it defies gravity? Whereas oil, it's just going to go right over the side. Just going to leak right over the side. See how that's going to just carry its, just lets itself sink down into those crevices. So I can pull it along here a little bit. Lets me just get some added definition in some of these areas. Here, between the leg there. Let's get a little more right there. We just needed some in here. Let's see if we can get a little more on the other side of this bridle. So yeah, working with oil paints. All wet into wet. And for those about to ask, how do you dry them faster? Well, I would suggest acrylics if you want them to dry faster. A little more, just a touch of blue in there. And in here too. I'm going to go back to my, I don't want to say glazing color, but it kind of is. Let's get a little more dark in here also. That's better. And sometimes it's not just about making it darker, it's also about giving it a little bit. See, I want it to actually mix there. And let's get ourselves that, oh, where's my green? Here it is, I think. So, nope, that's not my green. Here it is. So again, this is the oil brusher. Let's take the blue and green together here. See how nice, and just let that blend itself together. Same over here. Move him around. Right on that same area on this side. Tints it a little more green. But we're working with a lot of really dark colors, so that when it comes time to add something that's a little bit lighter, we're going to get some difference here. Again, we can just keep blending that. Start to get a little bit of something into the face here too. Start to pull that out. And this looks really light, but oh my goodness, it's very dark. It is really very dark. It is not light at all. Because Let's see, we'll throw a little bit of this over his pouch, and now you can see what's actually light. So it's really not light at all. It seems that way. It's a little bit of a green here again. And the green by virtue of all of the burnt sienna that we've had on the horse, it starts to set the two apart. Another form of contrast besides just, okay, this is light and this is dark. There's also color contrasts. And I'm even going to take a little bit of that green and see how I got it down into the crevices there and the darks of the horse's haunch. We're putting a little bit of that even on his boot. We're going to get a little bit of that green onto the reins and bridle. We can lighten it up even more. Onto the horse. Again, we also want to make sure we have some green on the skin tones here. I'm going to get some of that lighter color back out here again. And as always, we are avoiding the white. We're not using the white. These are homemade flesh tones that we used on our first guy here. As we work in a little lighter tone on his forehead. Onto the cheekbones. Above his eye. I'm going to try and drop in the eye over here. Yeah, you won't really be able to see it too much. Just got to throw it in there. Sometimes that happens in a video. I just have to angle it in such a way so that I can see it or reach it. And sometimes that means you can't quite see it. And now that we've got some lighter color out here, start to put some definition on these areas. So now we've got a little definition on our bridle. We're going to turn this over, do the same thing on the other side. Here we are. So actually the Patreon funds let me do is sort of a perpetual motion machine. The more support I get there, not only can I make more videos, but I can widen the subject matter. Speaking of subject matter, I believe eventually I'm going to be doing some tutorials with Big Child Creatives miniatures. So those will be larger scale for the most part. That's going to be fun. In 75 millimeter. And you can bet I'm going to be trying to use oils on those. So what I've just noticed is, actually this has to be skin tone, because he's got sort of that friar haircut there. So we are going to make a change here. Get some skin tone onto that. And then we're going to get some green in here. Let some of that mix in there, and then we'll just let that go for now. Let that settle. Move off to a different area. Working back on the bridle there. And again, so we're starting to find little places where we can start to introduce some lighter colors. And it's amazing what just a little bit of light added to something can do. There's a little bit of this light added to that green. And again, back to the skin tone there. I need to find a few lighter areas on our horse's mane and its tail. Some areas on the boots here. And you could, in theory, use the oil paints for weathering. It's kind of what most folks seem to use them for, is just weathering. To me, they make a really fantastic painting medium. And see, I can even right here start to pick out a few lighter areas. But also, if I need to restore the dark areas, I can do that too. Now I do suggest oils are for figures that are relatively finely sculpted. The rougher the sculpt is, sometimes oils, well, you can see how they like to follow that capillary action. When you have a nicely sculpted miniature, you have clearer, cleaner channels for that to happen, for lack of a better term. So again, let's pop that in there. We're going to go back to our blending brush. Can soften that. And remember the horse. So as this starts to, as the paint just starts to settle down a little bit, I can go back in here and actually blend even more. This is why I advocate working on more figures at once if you're going to use the oils. Because what better way to let that stuff just sit there and cure a little bit than to maybe be working on 10, 12, 20 other figures. And like I said, I just didn't want you to see me doing the exact same thing for 2 hours. You wouldn't have been able to see some of the stuff I'm doing now. And that is why I try to do the approach of doing it in a series. Because if this was a series for the Patreon, what I'd be doing is, okay, this is one episode. Edit that, get it going, render that up, and then do the next episode and the next episode, and each episode builds on the last until you get to the big finish. Those are always fun episodes for me because, well, not only do I have a finished video, but I've got a finished army. So I'm going to bring some of my stuff back out here. Like I said, this is one of the series that's already on the page. This is my Sky Earth. Now in metallic, all done in acrylics, by the way. We have a new question from Bethany. Oh, thanks, Bethany. Is the blending brush dry or wet? It is dry. Now it's got some staining on it, and that's a little bit, it's kind of on the rougher side, but this one's a little bit cleaner, a little less beat up. Let's try it. Let's find a few places to blend here. So see how it picked up a little bit of dirt there? But it's just perfect. Right over this here, and his cheek right here. I need to blend that a little bit. Now even this right here is little marking here. I want to get at the edges of that. So see how it picked up a little bit of light color there? Now pull some of that away. This is kind of my favorite part. So let's go over this and then we'll see just how much junk. Look at all that. Look at all that. Tail. Same thing. We're just going to let that feather out. So look at all the junk that's picked up. Let's see if we can wipe some of that away. We'll go back in here. We'll smooth some of this out. Smooth some of that out. But I could still, even on this guy, here, let's, well, that's all pretty smooth. So I can still go back in and watch what happens. Look at that. It's picked up more junk. So we'll get some of that away. And I'm going to go right here. I see a little bit of a rougher spot. And again, it's picked up a bunch of junk. Now, I have tons of these around because, well, you can imagine how fast I go through these things. So I always have, well, some of these are also brushes for gluing and for putting oxide paste on bases. All the things that people would be horrified to do to their brushes. So look at this. Yes, that can just... Remember how shiny that was at the start? It's a whole lot less shiny now, and it's only been a couple of hours. Here, let's take some of this away. Let's blend on this glove over here. And this is why I really like using oils for multiple things. And by multiple things, that to me is a couple of tanks, a dragon or two, a whole bunch of infantry, some horses, maybe some terrain, all doing that at the same time. Because that's what it's best for. But, you know, you can still have some fun. We've been working on our horse for a while here. Go back to this cloak. Suppose there's just one thing that they don't make in oils, at least that I haven't seen yet. They do not make fluorescent oil paint. Now I would really love that, because that's what I used on my Army of the Dead here. I absolutely love my fluorescent paints. So we are going to go back to some lighter colors here. Here, let's get this into our green. Start to get some lighter tones on the pants here. And if you feel like there's just too much paint on the brush, you can always take some away. So we threw that down. Let's grab that brush. Just take some away. And now we've got that. That is now blended out. So we take this lighter green over to the other side. Again, not focusing on highlights or anything like that. We're just trying to get in more midtones. Here we are. Back to our horse. And these colors, they're dark enough to still serve functionally as taking the black, so to speak. And it's got a little bit of greens in there, a little bit of blues, but still relatively dark. And I'm just going to throw a little bit on the hair. Let's see if we can't get a little lighter touch on some of the cloak highlights here. Ah, here we go. The speed and different techniques. Oh, thanks for the kind words there. It must be. Well, I know this is something you didn't see me doing 5-6 years ago. That's for sure. I wish I had known about this. The whole oil painting on miniatures thing. The only reason I discovered it is actually it was one of my Korean Facebook friends. He went onto Facebook Live, and it looked like he was using oil paints. I just had tubes of paint. And I watched it a couple of times, and sure enough, he was using oil paints just out of tubes. And I said, well, wait a minute. It was kind of one of those it comes in pints moments. And I tried it a few times. It was not quite what I expected the first time. Well, I didn't really know what to expect, actually, because he was doing it on a vehicle, and I was doing it on a miniature. And I ended up really enjoying it. I wish I got to do it more often. It's just sometimes you have... something has to be in the mail, and that makes it difficult, because oils do have a wee bit of a drying time. So we're just starting to work in now in his mane, a few more lighter colors, but you can see all the while it's picking up every time I do a brush stroke over that surface. I have to say, okay, I need to go back, get some new paint if I'm going to paint this little buckle in here. And as buttons or studs or whatever those are. We have another buckle over here. A couple of studs along the belt. And is this... So with each of these little touches we add, we build it up a little more and a little more. But what I like is, okay, throw a little bit of that lighter blue right there on his bow. That's something that maybe people wouldn't necessarily do with acrylics because they'd have to mix it. Well, see how this stuff kind of mixes itself. That is what you really get a decent handle on how to control it. At first, you don't quite know what's going to happen. Once you get used to it, though, then you start to anticipate. Goes all the way back to that chess match we were talking about. Only this time you know what's going to happen when you make your move. So Cloak here, and we've got that red. I'm just going to let it be a little more on the purple side. We got that brush all splayed out there. And what am I going to do? Do this. The reason I wanted to get down to this is just do a little more there. Stuff like this right here. This used to be so freaking hard to paint with acrylics because how are you going to layer this easily? Whereas for me, it's a whole lot easier. Just throw down a few brush strokes, let it mix. And if I need to, go in here with my blending brush. Because these figures, they're all one piece. That's how they come. So you can't just rip the horse off of this thing and try and separate it and work on, we've done it too. You take the rider, he's pinned to a dowel rod or something, you paint him separate, then you paint the horse separately. Well, that is not an option here. They are definitely glued at the hip, so to speak. So that is, I guess it's another advantage of the oils too, that you can work in those tighter to reach areas. So we'll do it again, maybe with a slightly lighter color. It's also shifted more towards the blue. Let's do another round here. See that? Or another one here. And in no time, that cloak certainly looks a whole lot more interesting than it did a few seconds ago. And that's the difference. It's just a couple of seconds. But now I'm going to take that same red and I'm going to put it elsewhere. And with oils, I think you're a little less afraid maybe to shift some color around and try some interesting visual color surprises, as I like to call them. So that's almost like a grayish tone there. Might be interesting on the skin. There we go. Like I said, you will have to allow this stuff to dry. The more oil brushers you use, and the more you thin them down, like you see me doing here, the faster they will dry. No doubt about that. because you are taking away some of that oil. Just finding a few, not highlights, but just lighter areas. And every so often I see something where it just needs to be maybe smoothed out. And let's work a little bit on our landscaping here. Since it's a color that's about right for that, this is another way to keep the line moving. You have color on the brush, you say, you know what? Bet you that'll work over here too. Let's find a few highlights here on our rocks. We don't want to go crazy because the figure is supposed to be the star of the show, not the flagstone on the base. Let's go to my light blue here. A couple of these need to just be lightened up here. These little segments here. Like so. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know if I want to have the cloak too much lighter. But where's our... I can see how we've done some similar things on our two cloaks. Then all the while starting to think, so I got these little rivets down in here. I got the fletching in here, which you really can't see, so I apologize for that. I'm going to go back to the smaller brush here. Let's get a little bit of rosiness to some of this flesh tone here. Don't want it to get too grayish. Just a little touch of, that was cadmium red medium there on the knuckles. Again on the cheekbones and forehead, and then I'm going to go back adding some of that lighter color. Go into some of our earlier skin tones here. And start to pick out the fingers more. Turn this over. Let's see if we can get the knuckles on this. And it just starts to set things down in the shadows, but the nice thing is that I can take those knuckles and blend them out a little bit. And take that color and throw a few little lights in other places. And let's find ourselves some kind of skin highlights here on the forehead. And the ear here, back of the head. Let's get a little bit of green back in here, and then see if we can't get a little bit of a beard work in there. And oh, let's see if we can't do a little bit of that sort of a glaze type thing with the capillary action on the hair. So we just touch it, see, and let it flow on its own. You can't force that. So we've got some here. And I just one stroke and done, that's it. Can't go back and forth with it. Because if you do, then you will get that mess. It will lead to a nasty little mess. So we're going to do some of those, a couple more of those darker glazes here on the face of our horse. And there are times where you may just have to say, you know what, okay, we'll leave this part of the figure, the face. We'll let it maybe either let it dry, or we'll let it sand for several hours and we'll do something else. And that might give the paint enough time, again, not to dry, but just to settle down in place, where it's a little easier to do the eyes. Just get some of that extra paint off of there. And again, I apologize for the shininess sometimes making it a little bit hard to see. A little more highlight on these knuckles here. And for those of you that are just coming in here, you can, I believe this is being recorded to my YouTube channel, so you should be able to go back, watch this from the beginning, and then hopefully you watch some of the other videos that are on the channel. Some of the, well, not all are set to public, but there's at least a good 30 or so that are set to public. I also do terrain tutorials. There's a few of those. I want to do more, but I need to expand on my recording equipment, because right now it's set up for smaller figures, and terrain, just there's no way that could be done where I'm doing this. That is not ever going to happen. Unless it's terrain for 5mm figures. Not that that wouldn't be fun, but I think more people want to see things like this. Just gonna take a wild guess. Okay, so what I'm gonna have to do here in a few minutes, I will have to conclude this session of At the Workbench, because it is now 5:02 in the morning. But we'll do a little quick review here. So, Song of Ice and Fire, that is the game for these miniatures that I've been working on. And this is the Night's Watch. And as I said, I've got multiple Army Painter series just for the Night's Watch. I'm also doing the Free Folk. You can check out some of my videos on the Savage Giants here. We've got 2 of those. One is set to public and the other one is for the patrons. So be sure to go watch that. Got videos with object source lighting, and Song of Ice and Fire won't be left out of that either because I've got pyromancers that I'm going to work on. And those will be really fun. All kinds of glowing object source lighting, lots of green flames, fluorescent paints, all the wild and crazy stuff you've come to expect. You just never know what kind of techniques are going to show up here. So let's go back to our reddish tone here. See if we can't do just like we did with the knuckles on the other hand. Do that on this hand. Like so. Get a little bit of a, yeah, there's fletching here. We'll try and get some of that. So I want to say thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks to Andrew, Bethany, Gary, Mr. Walls. I appreciate the company. Actually, it was nice to have, especially in the wee hours of the morning here. And sure enough, I will be on to doing more tutorial videos in recorded fashion. Be right on that later today, actually. Because the recording, well, I had to stop the recording when it was minus 22 here Fahrenheit, which I believe in Celsius is somewhere in the neighborhood of minus 40, probably minus 40, 41, somewhere in there. It definitely got frosty. And now it is not. So I will try to get right back into my filming schedule. So thanks again for watching, and if you can do the like thing, the subscribe thing, that's always good too. And if you want to see a lot more, participate more, you can hit me on the Patreon page. Again, the $15 Army Painter Pledge gets you everything. $10 pledge gets you all the Dark Sword stuff, which also includes oil painting demos. There's even a $5 level. So be sure to check that out and see what suits your needs. And until next time, I will bid you adieu. So here's our Night's Watch in oils. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.